What's good, everybody? Tapo here with a little video. Before the actual event, we're going to the CM, just normal local event. I'm taking Invoke Magistus. I'm not prepared at all for this, nor have I really prepped with the deck that much, but either way, I'm going to do a little profile here before we actually get to the event, and let's get right into it. Well, alright, but here's the profile. This is actually after the event, so I gotta do the profile without actually spoiling anything. There are 3 reminiscent, 1 original. This definitely just needs to be 3 100%. That will be changed in the future. 3 are WAS. Definitely need to cut this down to 2. I like it at 3. I just don't think it's a necessary piece to play at 3. This can definitely be cut down to 1. Potentially play it at 2 if you want to see it more, but realistically, you can just play it at 2. The Meltdown for your WAS, of course. This is just one of the best cards in the deck. This is just going to let you get into whatever you need to do, and you can add extra deck grip if you want to as well. 2 original invocation, 2 sword. You really only need the 1 sword. I was talking with one of the dudes you'll see in the mirror match. I had a mirror match in game 3. I got a lot of useful information off of that guy, so it's definitely going to be some big adjustments to this list. So expect a full profile actually here soon. You want to have a Mega Summon, of course. That's going to wrap it up for all of our Rogue monsters, or all of our Rogue stuff. Just this engine. You technically don't need Zorora. I just like him just because he's another way, and I'm still playing all of the synchro stuff for them with just this package, so I figured, I'll just leave him in here, honestly. Spitz perfect. Crowley, you just leave, honestly, but you really don't need this Aurora. 3 Super Poly, I had to borrow one up there at the event from one of my buddies because I could not find my last copy, sadly, so, but this is one of the best cards. I mean, this is like Super Poly. One of the best cards in the game, obviously. Just the GOAT. 2 Droplet. I've been really big on maining Droplet if I can, just because it's a decent breaker, and it's a breaker that's really good into your boards, or you can set it on your turn for interaction. I don't know. I like Droplet. If I could fit 3 without fucking up my consistency too bad, I think I might put it in there. I don't know, though. I really like to try and stick around that 40 range. Hand trap package. You have the 3 Flulos, 3 Ash, 2 Droll. And called by. Yet again, I was talking with the other Invoke player. He plays the Perulia and technically is a better target just so you can get into Whale a lot easier, but I didn't realize that 5 mana would be good to play in here as well, but that's also another water I can play, so technically I don't have to play the Perulias. If I want a water in main, I can just play 5 manas, which is definitely going to be one of the adjustments that comes to the deck. The extra, we got 2 of the towers, or not towers, but 2 of the big guy, the Hopper Invokes Aeon. This guy is so awesome. Absolutely goes nuclear in the mirror match. Into Branded, this is all very crazy. You can only super probably away half the board. But the Whale, literally the GOAT. Most of the time, if you cannot end on your old floodgate, which is Caliga, it would just end on the Whale and hope it's enough with a bunch of plays set up. Sorlet, probably one of the worst ones, honestly. He's one of the ones you're just going to banish the most, if not every time. His graveyard effect will come up, I've noticed, but other than that, it's not too worth it. The Barion's pretty good. I like Barion a lot. It's just something you're going to go into if you really want to grab a Mega Summon for turn 1, or if you want to get to Vera again. The 2 original guys, I'm playing 1 Caliga and 1 Mechaba. Play the one that bounces. I can't remember its name exactly. I just don't know if it's really worth it. And of course, you gotta have the Mix OCF. This card is so good. It just gives the deck so many more plays, let alone on turn 0, which oftentimes turn 0 play is not gonna be worth it, but it gives you so much variety in how you can do your line. It's really good. Magistus stuff, the 1 Fusion, Chorozo. This isn't really needed, honestly. Like I said, this should probably be the Magistus Synchro just for this format, because I mean, we are in Synchro format. Synchro, of course. The Artemis. Pulled the alt art today from my tournament pack. Looks clean, or it looks very clean. I didn't know this was an actual alt art until today, so this looks really nice. And then last 2 cards, these are definitely going to change. This is Guru and my Dragon. This could probably just be a Dragon Stapelia. The Secretarian, just as a piece of recursion at some point. Well, other than that, I think the deck is, or the extra deck is pretty set standard, other than the Magistus package and stuff like that. No other super quad target. Except for the side deck real quick. This is basically just my Dragotail side deck. Just slightly adjusted. 2 Lightning Storm, 2 Evenly, 2 Sloth. So glad to have this card. This card is absurd, honestly. The sheer fact that you're just going to be able to draw so much, and if they negate it, you don't have to pay the cost for it. It's absurd. 2 Perulia, 2 Nibiru, the 2 Bell. I'm still really back and forth on maining Droll or Bell, but I still think this format is just Droll, and then the Solemn package, of course, for our going first stuff. Other than that, that's about the normal stuff. Yet again, I'll do a more actual in-depth profile for this, but with that said, let's get into the video.
We got game 1 here up against one of my good buddies, Matt. So we started off here in the standby, immediately get Fluid and Perulian, which is kind of crazy, might I add. Matt is on one of the new decks with the Angeliki, but he's also playing it with Punk, which is pretty cool. I did not know the decks mesh that well, but honestly, from this, it seems pretty well. I do chain the double Fluid to the Angeliki, so I will get the +2 off of that. I believe we draw into Spirit Sword of Wasp and a Super Poly, that triggering a bunch of the Angeliki effects here in my turn, of course. Turn 0 plays, that's the way the game has evolved. It's the Angeliki traps a hand, and that ends his turn 0 play here for me, and then I'm free to go off from here. Activate Meltdown immediately, of course. You're going to go straight in at the Aleister from deck to hand. Slap down the Aleister, of course. Go straight in at the Invocation. Dropping the Spirit Sword of Wasp here, using its effect to banish a card from my opponent's extra. Look at my extra deck banishes here. They are upside down, but I believe it was one of the Angeliki monsters and then 2 different Punk names. It's the Punk Xyz and then the Punk Fusion. If I remember correctly, I do rip the Punk Xyz just to turn off that side of the line because I figured that he was doubled up on Angeliki names, which in actuality was true, thankfully. I am now logged into the, I believe it's the 5 monster effects off of the Angeliki background. I'm not 100%, I can't remember, but activating the Spirit Sword of Wasp here, going in and grabbing the new Aleister, the Reminiscent. The Aleister buffing up the original, then I go activate effect in order to add the Invocational or Invocation Sword. From here I drop Invocation and go straight off into the Caliga, and then I will use the Invocation to add back Aleister. I believe I'm going to set a Forbidden Droplet. No, I set a Super Poly and an Invocation Sword, and then we'll end on that. I believe I did have at least 2 options here due to his Perulian Graveyard. I was able to make a whale, but I do decide to go for the Sorolith here. This is the one time it comes up where I do have the Super Poly on board to play off of the Sorolith on his turn. Allowed me to put my Wasp back in Graveyard as well if he had any trigger effects. Check out my extra deck here, I believe, to see if I have any additional plays, which I don't believe I do here off rip. Drops the Punk Field spell up, uses 1 Punk from hand to send an additional 1 from hand, I believe, and he's going to go in and add a monster. Either that or he's going to attempt a special. In chain here, I do go Super Poly, a little late, but I do make the whale here. Immediately get punished for the fact that he has another Punk Extender in his hand. Thankfully, it's the one to fuse here, but I don't believe he does it due to the fact of whale being on the board. He goes off into one of his Punk Synchros here and then attempts to swing over my Caliga. The classic, I get to activate the Aleister in damage step to buff up Caliga to 28, which is 100 over his monster. He ends up setting a background, passing it over to me, and from here I'm able to go off using Invocation and or Invocation Sword to add back whatever I need. Picking up the Aleister, the Reminiscent here, I'll use his effect to buff up the whale and then special, and I believe Aleister's effect to buff goes through, but his effect to search will get negated by the Punk trap, sadly. Sadly, it did turn off my plan here to kill, which my plan was to get Invocation Sword, and then go to battle, and then make a giant invoked Aeon, and then be able to swing for over 8,000. I drop another Spirit Sword of Wasp here, looking at my extra deck banishes. It was 2 of the same Angeliki names, and then a Virtual World Shinshin, so I just decided to rip one of the Angeliki names because I did not see a world where he was able to hit Virtual World Shinshin, nor do I really care about it being on field that much. From here I go to battle and use Whale to swing over his monster, then I kind of have to pass on that. I really don't have any other extension other than that. On his standby he drops the E-Telly, grabbing one of the Punk names, moves over the main phase, he uses its effect to add, and then does his 1 monster effect for the turn. He'll use the field spell to get an additional draw here. He proceeds to normal summon Fua. You know the hand's looking rough and that's your best play. Uses the Fua and one of his Punks to go after the Angeliki names, activates one of the Angeliki traps in order to keep me the Angeliki, banishes the trap from Graveyard in order to add the Angeliki field spell from deck to hand. From here he uses a Punk in hand to send another one from hand to special 1 from deck. From here he realizes game so he just scoops it up because there's not a lot of plays that you can do under 1 monster effect and whale alone here. Looking at the hand here in game 2, it's double Sloth, Invocation, Invocation Sword, and Ash Blossom, so I'm definitely going to have to get some good draws off the Sloth here. Picks up a body off the Punk name from board, he'll then use the 1 in hand to send an additional 1 from hand to attempt a special, which is swiftly met from the Ash Blossom from our hand. From here he uses a Punk Extender to banish 1 from grave to special. Picks up another body off of the one that was just special, and then he uses it to fuse off into the Punk names. Tributes off the Punk Fusion to get an additional monster from deck as well. From here he grabs another body, and then uses that body to pick up the field spell. Jumps the field spell down and goes off into one of the Punk names. Punk name, grab another one. Gets an additional draw here off the field spell, then he uses the other 2 to make a Psychic and Punisher. That ends the Punk side of the combo. From here he drops the King and then goes off placing 2 Angeliki names into the background. Adds the field spell, discards the trap. Adds an E4, uses the trap then to immediately special the pawn, gets his level 2 token. Places another in back row, makes a Aladdin Dark Chaos Angel with the token, sets an E4 and passes it over to me. Better late than never, I top deck the draw, and then just looking at the hand here, I realized that Sloth quite literally has to resolve, or it's just over. It gets ashed, and then I scoop it up, and then we move into game 3. In the standby, I get E4, placing his pawn, and then 2 guys, the one that locks me into the 5 effects. I drop the Spinta here. Adding Crowley, go Crowley effect on summon, please him an Aleister in hand for the Caliga, go Aleister effect, target buff up the Caliga, Invocation Sword for the Exosia. Drop the normal invocation here to go off with being Aleister and Mechaba into the Soralath, just as another additional play and a fusion that I could potentially be able to do on my opponent's turn. Then I activate the Invocation Sword, targeting Aleister to add him back to hand. From here I set an Invocation Sword that was already in my hand and pass it over to him. I get Eclipsed in the standby. I will chain the Exosia here just so I can set up more plays off of my Invocation Sword, making the Baryon here. Swiftly met with the Swell for 3 here at the start of the main. Normal summons a punk body, grabs the field spell, then activates the E-Tele to get an additional body here. In Res of Summon, I do decide to drop the Invocation Sword here to make a giant hyper-invoked Aeon. Here on Summon of the Aeon, I will non-target banish all 3 of the punk cards he has on board, and then I'll link him his extra deck, and I decide to rip 3 additional punk names, considering he was only playing 1 of each of them. From here it moves to end phase, get a book of Eclipse draw, and then it moves to my turn, I'm going to draw for turn. Absolutely game-defining play incoming, I decide to normal summon Aleister. In chain, I'm met with yet another Book of Eclipse here. Picking up the original invocation, of course, which I am then met with a draw, but it's just a little bit too late at this point in the game. So here I drop the invocation and go off for all of my fusions for a giant whale, then I'll banish both cards on board, and then I get to practically banish whatever is left in his extra deck at that point, and then he scoops it up here. We got game 2 here up against the GOAT Ryan, who always kicks my ass in the standby. So we met with the Fua. I got the call by for the Fua, thankfully. Dropped the Meltdown, which is met with an Ash Blossom, so I have to normal summon the Aleister that's in my hand. Activated the effect here, banishing the Sorella for cost. Adding the Invocation Sword here, activating the sword, which is met with the Chain of the Fedralis. So on here, he reveals the 5, dumps them along, so my magical Meltdown will get blown up. And then my Baryon here does get bounced, but his effect does resolve. Picking up the Viracam, go Viracam effect, set invocation off for the Exosia. Go invocation engrave here to add Aleister back to hand. Use Aleister's effective special since I have not done that this turn. I just use effective surge. I use the Exosia here to just end on a whale just so I have some additional stuff to work off of on his turn. Got the invocation sword here to add Aleister back to my hand just as a piece of follow up if I make it to the next turn. Set a forbidden droplet here, pass it over to him. Special summons the Elf Note, which I meet with the droplet. Which is fine here, because he proceeds to go for the Angelic Field spell, getting his pawn, placing one of the damage ones, I believe it was, in the back row. Uses the pawn and the Tina here to link off into, I can't remember the name of the monster exactly, but it's the guy that's going to add the king from the Angelic. Immediately activates the king here in order to place a couple of the guys up and in the back row. Getting 3 guys from the back row here, going and adding another copy of the field spell and the trap, and using the token he gets to make a Aladdin Dark Chaos Angel, and banishing my whale, of course. From here he goes to battle and swings over my Viracam, and then I just basically know the game's over. I just wanted to see my top deck here. I attempted to go for a play to where I make a Viracam, and then was going to attempt to swing over everything, but I fucked up my line, so I went up scooping this one off rip. Game 2 here, I decided to let him go first. It's just a little piece of bait. I literally only opened draw as my one piece of interaction for his turn. Did not see any of the 9 cards I decided to side in, which was my breakers for the most part. Uses the 2 bodies on board in order to make one of the Elf Note guys. Gets his ad here, so I do get to activate the draw, but it's way past the point of it really making a difference. Hancock effect changes the Synchro on here in order to add another Elf Note from deck to hand. Regina hits board, and then he gets that Tina back, which allows him to get the tuner out of grave. Activates the continuous here and uses the tuner to make the guy. Grabs the guy to special summon the guy back. Specials yellow to grab the trap. Then we go for the 2 synchro and the tuner to make a crystal. Special summon the tuner back yet again. Goes off into a Donald Dragster, places his pen, and then passes it over to me. I start by dropping the Spirit Soda Lost, which is met with the Dragster. I normal summon the Crowley. Attempt to activate the effective invocation, which is met with the last Dragster, and then I super play off the Baryon, which is met with the Crystal Wing, and then it's just over from that point. We got a game 3 up here. This is the Invoked Mary. He starts his turn by normal summoning Aleister, which I do Ash. He does use the new Aleister to get that Reminiscent, so I do activate the troll here on resolution. Activates the Reminiscent for the Mechaba. Passes it over to me here. Start with the Meltdown, trying to play around the draw here just in case if he has it. I grab the Aleister, normal summon the Aleister, and then you go activate effect of a Wasp here because the Aleister was met with the Mechaba, and then I just scoop it up here because I really did not have enough extension off of that here. Going into game 2, I decided to go first. Start with the Awas here in order to add the Aleister. In chain here, he decides to go for the 5 minutes and make them Exosia. On res of the summon of the Mixosia, I drop the Forbidden Droplet, discarding another Wasp to negate the Mixosia. Drop Spinta and add Crowley, Crowley effect on summon. Normal summon Zorora. Equip the Artemis, Zorora effect special Aleister. Banishing the Hopper Invoked Aeon to add Invocation Sword. Using these two to go off into the Magistus Synchro. Effect on summon is going to equip the Chorozo. Banish Spinta from Grave to equip the Link to him as well. From here I decided to set the Invocation Sword, and then immediately in his standby I just go Invocation Sword and offer it for Caliga. He starts his turn by activating the Meltdown, and immediately normal summons the Aleister. Aleister effect resolves and adds Invocation of course. On res he goes Spinta, Spinta effect to add Crowley, Crowley on summon, makes the Whale, and then he decides to banish the Spinta from Grave to target his Mixlosia I believe, and equip the Artemis. So the Artemis here to pick up an additional copy of Spinta. Activates Reminiscent here, buffing up the Mixosia, I believe it was, searching the Invocation Sword. Activates Original Invocation here, going off to make the Mecha buff. Passes it over to me here. I do top deck the Super Quali, which is kind of crazy, so I add Spinta off the Artemis, and the Super Quali away the entire board, and basically just swing for game from here. In game 3 here, the hand was almost perfect. It was Meltdown, Fua, a Wasp, and Pop Slop in the original in the Reminiscent Aleister, dropping the Fua in the standby. He goes Meltdown, adding original Aleister of course, Kitsu to add 5 mana, normal summon the Aleister, add Invocation. Here goes Spirit Sword of Wasp, ripping the Magistus Synchro from my extra, activating Invocation from here to make the Whale, setting a back row and passing on that. Turn here was Droll. I immediately activate the Pot of Sloth, of course, hoping he has no interaction, which he does not, so I go Sloth for a Wasp, a Super Poly, and another Fuelos. Perfect discards here. We activate the Meltdown, add Aleister. He changed the Omega Summon to make Caliga, which is perfect for what I was wanting, because I go Super Poly here, discard to make the Aeon, which is basically already cleared enough. Normal summon Aleister, special Reminiscent, make another Aeon, and then I'm able to perfectly swing for game.